1937, then again in 1954, and of course in 1976. That was then. This is now. Ladies and gentlemen, a star is born right here in Philadelphia, and his name is Bradley Cooper. So how'd you like the movie?
Thanks for coming out.
Bradley, when you see this, when you hear this, from your hometown especially, tell me what goes through your heart and your soul.
You know what? When I was shooting the movie, I sort of dreamt about the idea of bringing it back home, because it's very gratifying for me. So this is a big moment for me, so I can't thank you guys enough.
That leads me to, I asked you a little bit about it downstairs. This had to have been a labor of love, because this took a lot out of you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it sure did. You know, as you get older, time is the biggest currency. And I was 39, and I had all of these ideas running around my head, and I always wanted to be a director, and I think I just was scared to do it and to actually put myself out there, because it is a vulnerable thing. Because if I'm going to tell a story, it better be truthful. But I just got to a point where I thought, no, I'm going to do it.
You told me a long time ago that directing is in your blood. You always thought that. And you've been around some great directors. David O. Russell, Clint Eastwood, the late Mark Nichols. Did any of that go into this? How much of their knowledge, and then how much did you want to make it your own?
I mean, everything that I never had the privilege of meeting Mike Nichols, but I studied his work, and I heard his, there was a documentary on him that I listened to. I watched 2 weeks before I started shooting, and they asked him, how do you approach directing? He said, the same way I approach acting, I prepare and prepare, but then when I show up on set, I throw it all away. And that was one of the biggest lessons, because I thought that was going to be how I was going to direct, because that's how I always approached acting. But David O. Russell, invaluable, Clint Eastwood, Todd Phillips, J.J. Abrams, all the people I've had a chance to work with, Susanna Bier also. And then just all the movies I've ever seen in my life, and quite honestly, meeting people and life itself. I never thought about making it my own because I just knew that I was going to have to work from a deep personal place, so it wasn't going to be my own because I had a point of view. I think that's why I waited so long too, because I thought, well, there's no reason to direct something unless you have something to say, which is, oddly what Jackson says.
Sure, I remember this. Working with Stephanie, Lady Gaga. Incredible. How did she motivate you and vice versa? Because she always wanted to be an actress, did some bit parts, but this is her first leading role in a major motion picture.
You know, I got lucky there because we both had something to lose. You know, this was a big swing for both of us. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in life people say, like, you know what, it's okay. You know, you just get. But this one, if it wasn't okay, we were going to take a hit. And there's something about, being in the foxhole with somebody else and not just yourself. And it was the first time she'd ever done a film, and it's the first time I had ever written and directed a movie. So it was nice to know that there was that vulnerability with both of us, and that I could walk through this, down this path together with her. But I have to say, all the other actors too. Dave Chappelle, isn't he great? It took me 2 years to get him to do this movie.
Did it really?
Yeah, I flew to Ohio twice. I kept sending him videos of the drummer that I wanted him to emulate. It was Jack White's drummer. That's why he's called Noodles, but we cut that part of the movie out. But he did all this work on drumming. Sorry, Dave. That's one of the things when you're in the editing room. That's why I was lucky I didn't have to explain it to the lead actor.
Right.
I'm sorry,
Right.
I saved a lot of time there.
And Dice Clay.
Oh man,
you were a fan.
Huge. Yeah, huge. Yeah. 8th grade, I memorized his whole album.
Come on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I loved Ford Fairbanks growing up, and I just loved him. He was major. I remember him on the Rodney Dangerfield New Year's Eve special with my dad watching it, and yeah. So the fact that he's in the movie is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And Eddie Griffin Jr.'s in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, it's and Sam Elliott. Let's talk about.
Did you write the part? Did you write the part for us?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, there was no. If Sam said no, there goes that Bobby Jack storyline. Yeah, and he really was vulnerable, and that's the hardest thing to do, is to show up, you know, just these little peppered throughout the shooting schedule, but have to deliver this very sort of emotional, deep performance. And you know, we all really became close in this movie.
No families.
Yeah,
No doubt about it.
yeah, we really did.
Tell me something. How in the world did the Philadelphia Boys Choir miss you growing up? Huh?
I was too busy on Wraparound.
Oh, wait a minute.
Is that what it was called?
That was it. Does anybody remember Wraparound? For those of you who don't, very quickly. See, I wasn't going to bring it up. But Wraparound was a teen show that I had in the late 80s, early 90s. It was like social media before social media. And we talked about every different topic in the world that involved young people. And we invited young people from all over the schools from the tri-state area. Bradley was on the show. And he first...
We go way back.
Way back. And he first told me this during Wedding Crashers. I don't know if you remember. You walk in, he goes, Ukee Washington. I said, what? But anyway, long story short, yeah, he was on the show, but I like to say I gave him his first spot on camera. Technically, I like to say it. When you're not around, I say it. But Bradley said he would always hide from the camera and didn't want to say anything because it was a talk.
It's true. It's
Is
true.
that true?
That's true. Yeah, I used to hide behind the other kids, like, I hope you don't pick on me. Yeah.
Isn't that something? Now Joe has a microphone. Now I know some of you may have some questions for Bradley, and if you do, just raise your hand and Joe will find you. Just tell us your name, where you're from, and your question as we hang with Mr. Cooper. Please stand.
Hello,
Hey.
my name is Marla, and I'm from Minersville, PA. Woo! Anyway, I want you to know I'll always remember us this way. And when I was watching that movie, you know, it's very heavy at the end. And I thought, it's not easy being a rock star. And then I started to worry about you, like, it can't be easy being a movie star. So, how hard is it?
You know, thank you for caring. I'm okay. I'm okay. Don't worry about it. But thank you. Only in Philly.
You're
I
wearing
love
Nikes, aren't you? Cool.
Thank you.
You know, my actual hope is that you didn't feel like you were watching people that don't reflect who you are. I always wanted to tell a story that could have been about any couple in any profession, and the only reason why I chose to write these characters is because they were more cinematic, and the scope that could come from them being musicians. But the hope is, you know, we all try to seek identity. We all, hopefully, if we were lucky, fall in love in the loss of love and deal with family and trauma as a child and how one deals with that. And those are a lot of the and then finding out what is it that we're doing here on this earth. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to say? And we need each other now more than ever. And those are the things that I hope you got from this. But I created a world in which these characters are more cinematically viable. But the hope is that there was something real up there that hit you here. That's the hope.
Amen. Bradley, take me back to the pivotal scene at the end, in the truck, in the garage. I read in the notes that Lady Gaga left you something in the truck. Can you talk?
She rapped. That was the last day. That was the last scene we shot, and she had rapped. And I think she felt like she wanted to be there till the end, but it was so late, and she had gone through so much that day. She shot the scene with Sam that's on the couch. So I was getting into the truck, and I opened up the door, and there were roses there that she had left. She surprised me. Yeah, that was really kind of perfect for the scene, actually.
I'm sure it was. I saw Joe. Can you find? Want to come down front?
Hi, my name's Joanna from South Philly, born and raised. My question is, when you decided to do this, did you automatically know you wanted to use Lady Gaga as your lead? And did you know that you wanted to be the lead male?
No, when I first, it was a series of ideas and sounds, quite honestly, and sort of things that I wanted to tell in the story. And then by the time I I pitched the movie to Warner Brothers. I really just had the first 10 minutes of it in my head. I was sort of running around the office, showing them everything. And they said, okay, go write it. But it wasn't until I was at this benefit, this cancer fundraiser. I started this foundation in my father's name for people who are suffering from majorly stage 4 cancer. And Lady Gaga was the final performance. She was the surprise performance, and she sang La Vie en Rose. And it just decimated the whole room. And it was that moment where I thought, well, that's it. You know, I didn't really know what she looked like, but at all. But I knew I wanted to meet her, and if I could, what I just saw was it. And that's why I wrote that in the first scene, you know, that she sings. That's what so I just basically made it so I didn't have to act, because I just recreated the experience, just in a drag bar, and my voice is an octave lower, but that's it.
Speaking of your voice, how challenging was that? How enjoyable was it?
Thank you. That means a lot. That was very hard. Oh man, that was brutal. It was a lot of, it hurt for the first 2 months. I would do these exercises with Tim Monick, who's this incredible dialect coach who I worked with on American Sniper. But I always knew that this guy had to be archetypal and idiosyncratic. The musicians that I know that are well-known musicians, they walk in a room and you just know they're a one-off. And so I knew it had to be somebody that was completely different than who I am. And I always heard Ali and Jackson, when they would be speaking in my head, that he would be sort of this baseline note, and she would sort of be up moving sort of staccato around him. So I always heard it in my head, and then it was just a matter of getting it there.
Wow.
You're singing. Oh no, I can't do it now. He's in that garage.
Where's Joe? Joe, let's go in the back. Okay.
I don't think so. Yeah. But I did have this catchphrase. We'd do this like phrase, and I don't know if I can still do it. They were like, I don't know if I can do it. This part here is about as good as it gets for me. I can't even do it anymore.
Hey, Zach Stone from South Philly. So this is the 4th variation of this movie. What made you want to base your character in the world of country music?
You know, I didn't, it's for you to judge, right? Because that doesn't belong to me anymore. It's your movie now. But I don't see him as a country musician. He's sort of a hybrid. Yeah, I don't, I mean, he takes his hat off when he goes on stage, which I really kind of like. The hat that he wears is sort of to protect himself from the world in a way. But when he takes his hat off, that's when he's himself. That's why he takes his hat off there at the end of the movie in the garage. But I never, that's also why I wanted his accent to be a place that you really couldn't place it. And the whole Sam Elliott of it all started out by me trying to find a voice that I could work on. And I was listening to a bunch of voices, and then I thought, well, where's Sam Elliott from? And he's from Sacramento, California, but his mother was from Texas. That's why he's got this odd accent. And I would always, so I started listening to these interviews of him, and I would work on the voice. And then I thought, well, what if, and I was reading Bruce Springsteen's autobiography, and he was talking about how he stole his father's voice. And I used to want to be my father all the time. I used to have a briefcase when I was in kindergarten, and the kids would want to beat me up, and my sister would beat them up. And it's true, on the bus. She had all this hair, and she'd wear a Phillies cap, and they thought she was a boy. Yeah. And God, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, Bruce Springsteen. And so that's how that whole relationship was born. I thought, oh, this older brother, and he wanted to steal the voice of his brother, because I didn't want to do a father-son thing. I like this idea of the prodigal son and the other brother who never got the chance, and this little cherub all of a sudden with this gift outshines him. And so I actually asked Sam to come over, and I didn't know what he was going to do, if he was going to be insulted. And he was kind of come over, and I said, I want to play you something. It's an interview you did at the Sundance Film Festival 2 years ago. And he said, okay, and I played it, but it was me doing him in the interview. And I said, here's the idea, and he was kind of blown away by it. And I said, here's the whole idea, and I pitched him the whole relationship, and thank God he said yes.
Speaking of voices, I listened to Sam, I listened to Lady Gaga, Dave Chappelle, Dice Clay, the entire cast. in Toronto. I listened to just a number of the interviews. And the one word that kept coming up was trust. On both sides, trust. They couldn't say it over and over again. And as a first-time director, that has to mean a lot to you. And if so, in what way, when you hear that from your coworkers?
I mean, it's everything. And that, people would often ask what was the hardest thing or what was the pressure. The pressure is, you have these incredible artists who you could feel they are completely trusting you for me to deliver on that promise. And the one thing I said to them was, I don't know, I hope the movie's gonna be great, but one thing I could promise you, there won't be a frame of you on the film that I don't believe you're not acting, that you're 100% authentic. And there's not a moment in this movie that I don't believe it. There really isn't.
I'm sure you all would agree with that as well. Joe, me up, young lady, all the way down here. I'm gonna see if my arthritis holds up. Oh, and bend over. All right, dear.
I don't want to stand up. Hi, I'm Daria Rose. I'm from Broomall, Pennsylvania. I just wanted to tell you that when you didn't win the Oscar for Silver Lining Playbook, I was shocked. And from my personal experience, I went to Temple University, and Temple Owls, I went for acting and television production and things like that, and the way that you were able to portray this character, I mean, I could find relativity in my own life to you, to your character, to Stephanie's character, and my dad committed suicide 9 years ago last week, and I have a brother that fell into drugs. So all of this is so relative to today's society that a lot of people don't speak on, and I just feel that this movie is so powerful, and now that I've seen it, I know why you didn't win that Oscar, because you're gonna get it for this film. Inside of you found to kind of muster up the energy to make this amazing film, but thank you.
Wow, thank you.
And we talked. Go right ahead. And I'll let you compose yourself right now, because we talked in the back on a similar situation as far as going through a tough time in your life, and you had to go to a dark place in this film. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I what I asked everybody to do in this movie, I knew that I had to ask that of myself too. And I've dealt with issues that Jackson has dealt with, and I knew that the thing I cared most about was anybody who had anything to do with addiction, knows about addiction, would watch this movie and say, yeah, that's it. So as an actor, you always have to draw on your personal experience, and I knew it was going to be difficult, but I have to say, it felt so soothing and therapeutic to do it. It really felt like I was using whatever I've been through for art, and in the hope of then putting it out there and giving it to you, that if I'm lucky, it'll heal in some way.
Very well said. Very well said. I see Joe, I'm sorry. I'd love to take you all, but Joe's back there with the microphone. Joe, go ahead and grab somebody. We'll get to you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patrick. I live on 12th and Spruce, so I'm like 5 minutes away. So Sam Elliott's character says we tell the same stories over and over. I mean, we've seen a movie with this title 4 times. We've seen this rise and fall story so many times. What is it about this story that you wanted to make your directorial debut and say, I have to make it right now in 2018?
I didn't think about it being in 2018. I just know that I'm living in 2018. What was 2015 back then? I never saw this story as having anything to do in a lot of ways with the other ones that preceded it, to be honest. Jackson is what I cared about is what happens when a trauma occurs to you at a young age, and if you don't have the tools or the people around you to help deal with it, and how one survives and endures. And that's Jackson. And with this specific character, he happened to bring it into song, and he wrote songs and became a musician, and all of a sudden he was rewarded for that, yet he hadn't cultivated the other parts of his life. That interests me. What happens to a person when they haven't had the tools to deal with trauma? Allie, what's so different about her and the other characters that preceded this in this property, she's not an ingenue, she's 31 years old. She's somebody who's been beaten down by the business, by men telling her that she's not pretty enough to merit the song she's writing. That's it. That really interests me. Where is that person? And then if you take these two people that haven't had the help and the tools to progress and become their best selves, they meet each other and fall in love. And it's almost like, remember the end of The Graduate when they're both sitting in the bus and they made a decision, and now what? You know, and this is almost the now what. These two people, there's no infidelity in this movie. Their love is, you never question it. But even with that bond, that intense energy, it's still very difficult because they haven't had people around them necessarily to help them. And so that's the story I wanted to tell. And that's the story that I hope you saw tonight.
When you mentioned that Allie not being pretty enough, I remember this story that Stephanie told as far as the makeup wipe and what you did to her, and how you wanted her to be on screen. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, the reality of that story is it was the screen test, because Warner Brothers also didn't really initially see this with this work. It was first it's just a huge swing in general trying to do this movie. But so I wrote a scene, it was a 10-page scene, and the opening of the scene is she's waking up to the sound of Jackson's, it wasn't Jackson there, it was like me, and I was like wearing earrings, trying stuff. It was pretty embarrassing. Because I didn't really know who he was then. So she hears his motorcycle approach, and she wakes up in the morning, and I had these shots, these compositions, and I showed her, I said, this is what it's gonna be, the first couple of shots of the movie. And it just meant that she was waking up so she would have no makeup on. And then she came to get into the bed, and I just said, well, it kind of looks like you have makeup on. And she said, no, I don't have any makeup on. I said, really? It looks like you have makeup on. And so her makeup, I said, can I just yeah, you have makeup on. She's like, okay, I'll take it off.
So she just went, so busted. Maybe one or two more, then we have to go. Patty Jackson.
Hello, Bradley. Hi, Ukee.
I can see, I got
You can
three
see,
lenses.
you can see. I'm Patty Jackson from WDAS Radio. And growing up here in Philadelphia, being here, a South Philly girl, you gotta know that every time we see you on the red carpet, on the award shows, we are so freaking proud of you. And we sit in Bean and say, he's from our area. So just want to say it is such an honor to be here and keep making us proud. And we will continue to support you. Love you.
Wow, thank you.
And Bradley, following that up, there are a number of young people in our area today, that whether they go to Kappa here in the city or over in Camden, what have you, that want to do what you do. What type of advice? And some people here might have children who might want to do that. What type of advice would you give them?
Never to give up. And you were asking me earlier about do I read reviews, and,
right.
And I don't read reviews because you want to really take care of that part of you that has inspiration. You know, you really want to treat it like the gift that it is, and dreams are part of that inspiration. And just surround yourself with people that are going to be loving. That's a major thing. And be kind to yourself. That's another thing I'd say. You know, really give yourself a break. But you have to work hard. There's just no substitute. But if you love what you want to do, the work ethic should be a byproduct of that love.
I know you said you don't read reviews, but I had to pull one. I had to have one before I came up from the office. It's from Variety, and I just wanted to read it. Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga are stunning together in Cooper's rapturous rock and roll remake of a romantic saga that never gets old. A Star is Born is that thing we always yearn for, but so rarely get to see. A transcendent Hollywood movie. It's the fourth remake of a story that dates back to 1937, but this one has a look and vibe all its own. A Star is Born is more than a throwback. It's a reminder of the scrappy, grand passion that movies are all about. Bradley Cooper. Joe, you put the pressure on you, man. I said, Ukee didn't date me.
Bradley, what's going on? My name's John from Northeast Philly. Northeast Philly. I've heard reports that you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And I'd just like to know how big of a fan you are, because I would love it, and I think the fans would love it if you could lead us in a quick Eagles chant.
It's funny you mention that, because coming up the stairs, I told Coop, I thought, be cool, go back a long way. I said, look, man, I think we ought to get a petition or something. We need him during the Eagles' next Super Bowl run this year. It's a true story. To sing the national anthem. Are you in it with me?
That'd be something.
That'd be something. That'd be something.
It could start right here, right now with that.
No, I'm not gonna do it.
No, I'm gonna work on that though. I'm gonna work on that. Maybe we'll do that Eagles here before we leave. One last question. How are we doing on time? What's Jesse? You want to make sure how we're doing on time? Are we good? One more? Okay. Thank goodness I don't have to do the news tonight. I can stay there all night. Oh, I'm sorry. He's gave the mic up. I'm sorry.
Hi there, Bradley. Thank you for being here. The film was unbelievable. My name is Francesca from Philly, in Philly Burbs. I loved what you did with sound in the film and isolation, and as Jack gets increasingly isolated, the tinnitus comes in, and I just wondered, as a performer, I know you've worked in film and also theater, do you feel nourished by a live audience, or do you sometimes feel more drained? And just as a celebrity, how do you fight the tinnitus of fame when there's that isolating barrier between you and the rest of the world?
No, oddly enough, it's funny you bring that up. I was just thinking about that the other night. We were in Toronto, and we were in front of a lot of people, and we were talking. And the thing that I think is odd about, well, first of all, the sound thing, yes. I really wanted to I thought about what is fame, because I didn't want like paparazzi following them or like running away or stuff that I've seen before. It's like, what if I were to describe my experience of fame, it really is sonically. It's like a cacophony of noise and then quiet. And it's that rhythm. And that's sort of the way the movie opens. I wanted to set that up right away, and it continues throughout the film. But I'm trying to think, what was the other thing I was going to say?
As a performer, do you feel nourished?
Oh, right, thank you. Yeah, so the other night we were in Toronto, and I don't read reviews, but it was in Toronto I felt like, oh wow, this movie, people seemed to be getting what I was trying to do, which really was incredible. And then we were talking in front of a lot of people, and when I stepped away, I was talking to Stephanie, and I said, isn't it odd that one can feel the one's truest self in a huge group of people, with a lot of people, and almost when you're by yourself, alone, is when the demons can come in and self-doubt. And it really reminded me of how much community means everything. And I think especially now, we need to love each other. I know that's a general thing, but it's just the truth. Because, when you look another human in the eye, and there's a connection. There's so much, we can heal each other. And I know that I always feel just comfortable when I'm around people. I love people. And so that's what when you just said that, it made me think of that, because I was just talking about that the other night.
You will always be a part of our community, young man. Always.
Thank you.
I'm Ukee Washington. He's Bradley Cooper. The film, A Star is Born, opens October 5th. Tell the world. Thank you.